Well, I want to put up a little warning here. I remember being younger and back when we would buy CDs or cassette tapes. It was a long time ago. Some of them would have warning, parental advisory, explicit content. I want to put a warning on today's message that this is going to be so different than a lot of what culture is saying these days. There's so much these days in culture about it being a safe space. And yet, what if, in order to become everything God has called you to become, the person God has called you to become, accomplish everything God has called you to accomplish, it's not the safe place, but it's not the safe things, it's maybe some of the stressors that God uses, or maybe some of the struggles God uses, where we're trying to avoid hard times. But what if it's actually the hard times that create us, that help make us, that help develop us? Would you just consider? Someone's like, I'm done watching. Would you let's just dive back into the book of Acts and see what takes place and learn from this. In Acts chapter 14, beginning in verse 8, it says, in Lystra there sat a man who was lame from birth. He listened to Paul as he was speaking. Paul looked directly at him, saw that he had the faith to be healed. Stand up on your feet. At that, the man jumped up and began to walk. This is incredible. When the crowd saw what Paul had done, they shouted, "The gods have come down to us in human form." And now it was the priest of Zeus, whose temple was just outside the city, brought bulls and wreaths to the city gates because he and the crowd wanted to offer sacrifices to them. Barnabas and Paul, though, they tore their clothes. They rushed out shouting, "Friends, why are you doing this? We too are only human like you. We are bringing you good news, telling you to turn from these worthless things to the living God who made the heavens and the earth. In the past, he let all the nations go their own way. Yet, he has not left himself without testimony. He has shown kindness by giving you rain from heaven and crops in their seasons. He provides you with plenty of food and fills your hearts with joy." Even with these words, they had difficulty keeping the crowd from sacrificing to them. Then some Jews came from Antioch and Iconium and won the crowd over. They stoned Paul and dragged him outside the city, thinking he was dead. But after the disciples had gathered around him, he got up and went back into the city. You see, in Iconium, Paul and Barnabas, they spoke so effectively that many people began to believe. I think it's important to recognize that it's far more beneficial to be effective than impressive. We live in a culture that it's like everyone wants to be impressive. So what we post online, we want to impress people by maybe the vacation spot we're in, or the kind of vehicle we have. Or it's like we want to impress them by what it is that we're actually getting to do. But it's like, what about if we're like, we just want to be effective? Impressing people is overrated. And yet it's in this midst that some begin to poison the people's minds. You see that happening today. I remember being a kid though, and like some of the things in our house, especially like in the laundry room or maybe in the garage, it was labeled poison, like do not consume. If you ingest, head to the hospital. But what I've discovered is not everything that is poison is labeled poison. And so we live in a culture where maybe people's minds are being poisoned. Would you consider that? That there's poisonous material that we're consuming. You see, we should be aware of what we put into our bodies. Now, if you're like a vegetarian or a vegan, awesome. I'm not. But I am very, very careful with what I put into my body. I go to the doctor every year, get blood work done and all that, and it's all great. But I gotta tell you, like I don't eat a lot of packaged food. I eat a lot of protein. So all you vegans and vegetarians, plug your ears. But I eat a lot of grass-fed, grass-finished beef. I love bison. I eat a lot of fruit, but I want it to be all natural. Even like the honey I eat, and I love honey. It is raw honey. I don't want preservatives. I eat over 90% of what I eat. It's not packaged because I'm careful with what I put in my body, because I want to have energy, because I want to feel good, because I want to take care of this body that God has given me so that I have energy to accomplish what God has called me to accomplish. But I also need to be aware of what I put in my minds. You see, you might be looking at, okay, what about my diet with what I eat? But what about what you put into your minds? What about what you're watching late at night online? What about what you're consuming, putting into your minds on social media? What about the conversations that you're having or the music that you're listening to? I wonder if we're polluting our minds because of poison. Maybe even it goes beyond polluting, where we end up with, would you consider perversion in our minds? Because we're consuming what culture has to offer, and we're not putting into our minds what the Bible says. And so Paul and Barnabas, they're there and they spent considerable time there. You know, some things take time. I am impatient and I want everything now. But the reality is sometimes great things take a great amount of time. There's sometimes transformation in people's lives. It can take time. Sometimes for God to maybe do in our lives a deep work, that can even take time. And it's during this time that they're speaking boldly, that there's signs, that there's wonders, there are miracles that are taking place. And you would think everyone who was seeing this and hearing this would believe. No, they didn't. The people were divided. Just like people are divided today. So many people say, I'll believe it when I see it. Then they see it and they still don't believe it. And so there's all this that's taking place. And there was this plot to kill Paul and Barnabas. And so they found out and they fled. They're like, should we stay or should we go? Should we stay or should we go? If we stay, there will be trouble. But if we go, no. It's like, hold on. Look at what's taking place here. On one hand, God is doing incredible things. On one hand, truth is being spoken, but some people are receiving it, other people are rejecting it, and there is this division. Division is either an opportunity for discussion or it is an outlet for destruction. Let me say that again, because we see that happening in our world today. That division, it's either an opportunity for discussion. I hope it is. It seems like that's less and less becoming the case, or it just becomes an outlet for destruction. And oh, have we seen that taking place these last few years. The more you progress, the more problems you will encounter. You might be like, well, hold on. Why do you have to say that? Because it's true. You're like, well, I'm single. When I get married, there'll be, less problems. No, when you get married, there's going to be more problems. You're like, well, once we have kids, there'll be less problems. No, when you have kids, there's more problems. You think, well, once I get the promotion at work, there will be less problems. No, you get the promotion, you're going to have more problems. Once I get to this stage, that's just how it is. But I want to encourage you that you can discover, you can become anti-fragile. Oh yes, you're like, what does that mean? We're going to discover how you can become anti-fragile. So they're on this journey. There's a man in Lystra who'd been born lame. He'd never been able to walk. You know, it is very hard, challenging, difficult, looking at other people doing what you can't do. That's hard. Or maybe even harder, what you've never been able to do. Maybe you're looking at other people and they're able to buy a house in California, and you're like, I can't buy a house. I've never been able to buy a house in California. Maybe you're looking at them go on this great vacation, and you're like, oh, that's great. I've never been able to go on a vacation. Maybe you're looking at them do something professionally as they start their own business, and you're like, I've never been able to do that. And you have this man here, and he's listening to Paul. I wonder if someone's listening to what God is speaking to them today, and he's looking at Paul, and Paul's looking at him. I've heard it said that eyes are the windows to the soul. Now, I can't see your eyes right now, but in just walking around in our world, at our gatherings on campus in Glendora, looking at people's eyes, and you see some people, you look at their eyes, you see they're afraid. You see some people, they're discouraged. You look at some people and they just look lost, but there's other people you look and you see faith in their eyes. And Paul looked into his eyes and he saw this. This man has the faith to be healed. Not to just restore what once was. Looking at some people, and I could see in their eyes, it's like they just want it to go back to how it was before the economy and inflation. They want to go before how it was, before the cultural chaos, how it was before. But this is not to go back to how it was. This is to go to a place of what never was. I want someone today to develop what I'm calling a faith focus. That you have the faith, that in your eyes, you're not just looking and for everything that could go wrong, might go wrong, probably will go wrong. But you develop a faith for God to do what you've never seen him do in your life, for what you've never experienced him do in your life. Come on, I'll go Guns N' Roses on you. When I look into your eyes, do I see your love refrain? Or do I see your faith rise up? Does anyone here have the faith for God to do what he's never done? You're like, he's never done that in my life. Well, do you have the faith for him to do it in your relationship? You're like, he's never done that. Do you have the faith for him to do that in your body, that healing? Do you have the faith to see it? It's like what Paul had the faith for God to do it through him. This individual, this man, had the faith for God to do it to him. Did you? Don't miss that. Paul had the faith for God to do it through him. This man had the faith for God to do it to him. Oh, I got to tell you right now, I got the faith for God to do something through me today. But do you have the faith for God to do it to you? Because when through meets to, there is no limit to what God can do. That sounds like a rap song, but you're going to discover that you can be anti-fragile. I love this here because you have Paul and you have this man who's lame, and there's no conversation. Paul doesn't go ask, how are you doing? Are you in any pain? Did you just throw your back out? Like, are you here? And like, tell me about your life story. Tell me about how hard it's been. There's no long prayer. It's amazing. Sometimes you see people praying for others in church, and you're like, you're praying and you're looking at your watch, and you're like, how long the power is not in your words. Paul looks at this man And he simply says, stand up. Stand. That is a word for someone today. You've been down too long. Maybe you've been down. It's in your career. Maybe it's in your emotions. And God wants you to stand up today. Immediately, he jumped up. He was carried in. But he gets to walk out. And all the people there, they thought it was Paul. They thought it was Barnabas. Just like you think the raise you got was because of your boss. No, it was God. You thought the reconciliation in your family, how you got to see family members that you had never met before. Oh, you thought that was because of the research that someone did online. No, that was God. And they thought that they were gods and they wanted to offer sacrifices. You know, we do the same thing today, in a sense. Now, you might be like, no, we're not wanting to offer actual sacrifices to people, but we do. We idolize celebrities, artists, influencers. So we spend our money buying things that they produce, whether it be music, content, clothing. We idolize, and if we're to be honest, we begin to worship them. But Barnabas and Paul, they tore their clothes. This was to express anguish. You see, many of us would be loving that moment. Many of us would be saying, okay, we need to start a new social media account. Most of us would be saying, okay, where's my award? It's just like, no, they rushed out to the people. They're like, hey, listen, we're human just like you. I love this. This is saying like we are relatable. In our celebrity culture, there's even so much like celebrity pastors and celebrity this and like thinking that you can't relate. And it's like sometimes the most impactful thing you can be is imperfect. How true is that? And yet most of us, if we're to be honest, or maybe not most, but maybe some, it's like we're chasing popularity. It's like, well, hold on. What about if we don't focus on being popular, but we focus on being powerful, on being a conduit of God's power? Popularity has become a drug. How many followers? How many likes? How many downloads? Become an addict. There's so much talk today about addiction, and addiction is a genuine problem. You see drugs right now. You see cities being destroyed. You see how much is coming across the border, and you're like looking at these drugs, and you're like, that is a problem. But you want to know what else is a problem? The addiction, the drug of popularity. Don't let it go to your head, or it can destroy your heart. Not only do I want to encourage you to have a faith focus, but I want to encourage you to have a humble heart, to recognize that power from God is of far greater value than popularity with people. Oh, and we're discovering that we can become anti-fragile. They say, like Paul's like, listen, we're bringing you good news. I got good news. But sometimes the good news is shining a spotlight that we're making some bad decisions. The good news is not that you can live however you want, do whatever you want, and God just makes it good. No. Sometimes the good news is we need to turn from our bad ways. He's saying, listen, you need to turn from your worthless things to the God who made everything. There is power in repentance. Repentance, it's like a change of mind, which results in a change of heart, which results in a change of action. And I want to ask you, what have you turned from? What worthless things do you need to turn from? Maybe there's an addiction that you need to turn from. Oh, maybe you're like, it's not an addiction. Maybe it's an unhealthy habit that you need to turn from. Maybe it's a toxic relationship that you need to turn from. It's not about adding God to our lives. And I think that's where so many people get it wrong. They think, I go to church on Sundays. We don't go to church, we are the church. Oh, I add a little bit of Jesus to my life on Sundays. That's not what this is about. If you have not turned from your old life to Jesus, you're not really following fully Jesus. I'm not talking about being perfect. I'm not talking about making mistakes. I'm talking about what we need to turn from and what we need to turn to. Because you can't turn to Jesus unless you're turning from something else. And maybe that's why so many people right now are feeling pulled in so many different directions. Maybe you right now, I feel like this is pulling on my time, and this is pulling on me, and this is pulling on me. Do you ever just feel like I'm being pulled apart? Maybe that's because we're trying to add God to our lives versus fully living our lives for God. It's like in the past, like God let nations go their own way. God gives us the gift of free will. You're like, that's awesome, but it's also frightening. Because you can do whatever you want, whenever you want. You can choose, this is who I am, this is however you want to say that. But listen, sometimes free will take you into a prison and you'll realize you are no longer free. But when we fully follow God, we think, oh, that's so limiting. No, it's not. You find true freedom when you turn from the worthless things of this earth to the worthy one of heaven. Oh, you're going to discover today that you can be anti-fragile. It says that even after all that Paul and Barnabas said, the people, it was difficult because they just wanted to sacrifice to them. But then there were some Jews that they came from Antioch and Iconium. Wait, oh yeah, that's where Paul and Barnabas were in the past. They came and they won the crowd over. Isn't it amazing how fickle crowds are? Oh, you get into a crowd and it's a little scary. Because crowds, it does something with your emotions. And that's where you get mobs or you get crowds that end up doing things because there's not as much thought going on. It's this feeling and you get caught up in the moment. And so at one time they wanting to worship them and sacrifice to them. And then it's like the crowd is like, wait, hold on. Now they're just not, it's not the past coming back to haunt them, it's the past coming back to hunt them. As followers of Jesus, it's like we're being hunted today. It's like, because you can't pray there, you can't read the Bible there, you can't say this on this platform. And it's like, well, hold on, sometimes the people that we're trying to help are the ones who come back to end up hurting us. You see that happening with Jesus? How fickle the crowd can be. On Palm Sunday, they're cheering for Jesus. A few days later, crucify him. The same people who applaud us can end up sometimes later on being the same people who want to attack us. It's amazing how people will turn on us. It can be hard. Sometimes the people who had your back are the ones who are stabbing you in the back. They ended up stoning Paul, working to execute him, to kill him, and they left him outside the city, dragged him outside the city, and they left him for dead. Have you been attacked? You're like, yeah. Have you been left for dead? You're like, yeah, that individual, they didn't just break up with me. The way they left, how they left, they left me just with a dead dream. Or maybe at your work, it wasn't just the way you were terminated, but how you were terminated. And so you're like, career-wise, I've been left for dead. Here's what I want you to know. People may turn on you, but even when people turn on you, you can still turn to God. Oh, it says then that the disciples gathered around Paul. Here I want you to know, at this church, which is why I'm so glad you're joining right now. And if you live close enough that you join in person, because at Faith, we gather around the wounded. At Faith, we gather around the hurt. At Faith, we gather around the beaten. I think we need to be careful around rock throwers. Oh, I know maybe you're around people and they're criticizing other people, or they're writing things online, and you might be joining them, or maybe you're just with them, but you need to be careful around rock throwers, because eventually they may turn and start throwing rocks at you. I want to encourage you to get around people that don't throw rocks, but people that go to the rock. I remember as a kid, we would sing, I go to the rock of my salvation. I go to the stone that the builder rejected. We would go on and sing, on Christ the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. Because at this church, we gather around you. You might have lost a loved one recently. Oh, we want to gather around you. You might have been diagnosed with an incurable disease. We want to gather around you. Others might leave, not us. One of the things I call Lindsay, and you're like, this doesn't sound very nice, but it is. Lindsay is a loving leech. You're like, did you just call her a leech? Yes, I did, because she is so loving and she's like a leech, but she's not sucking the blood out of you. She's just there with you, like a leech who you can't get rid of. And it's like what about as followers of Jesus? If we need to be loving leeches where we're not sucking the life out of people, but we're actually there for them when they need it the most. I found that a lot of people will gather around you when you're up. A lot of people will gather around you when you're popular. A lot of people will gather around you when you're making a lot of money. A lot of people will gather around you when you're up, but not many people will gather around you when you're down. But at this church, we gather around you whether you're up or whether you are down. I want you to know they may have left you for dead, but the God who rose from the dead can lift you to life in that relationship, in that career, putting you onto a pathway of purpose and destiny. This is amazing. Wait, hold on. He gets up and he went back into the city. Wait, what? You got to know when to stay and when to leave. You realize you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. We got to be Spirit-led. In Galatians chapter 6, verse 17, let's read what Paul writes. From now on, don't let anyone trouble me with these things, for I bear on my body the scars that show I belong to Jesus. Wait, what? You imagine someone who'd been stoned? I'm not talking about legal marijuana. I'm talking about stoned, physical stones being thrown, and the damage that I have a mark on my ankle from surgery. But like, wait, did the stoning bring strength? I remember as a kid going to my grandma and grandpa's house. And my grandma and grandpa, because they loved to travel, they would bring things back. And they had things from Egypt, and they had things from different places and different countries in Europe. And they had played from all and it would be like my mom would say, stay away, those things are breakable. And she had all these breakable things behind glass. Like a young kid, I was like, wait, hold on, stay away. And as a kid, I remember thinking, so valuable things are fragile, and valuable things break. But I want you to know you're valuable. You're a child of God, but you're not fragile. Even though culture wants you to think that. You need to not get triggered. You need to find a safe space, but you're valuable, but you're not fragile. Here's what I want you to know. You can bend without breaking. Here's what I want you to know. You can strengthen, not snap. That even if they are trying to take you out, God is actually using that to take you forward, and you can discover you become anti-fragile. Some people say, I am resilient. You might be thinking today that you're resilient. To be resilient is able to withstand or recover quickly from difficult conditions. You're like, yeah, I'm able to withstand it or recover quickly, but I want you to know you're more than resilient. You're like, what are you talking about? You can become anti-fragile. What does that mean? It means that you increase in capacity to thrive as a result of stressors, volatility, and attacks. Let me say that again, that you're increasing in capacity to thrive as a result of the stressors, the volatility, and the attacks, that it's actually all the stressors in your life. It's actually all the attacks. It's actually all the struggles that are actually increasing your capacity, that you didn't just withstand it or recover, but you are stronger and you are more powerful because of it. You may not believe me, but I never skip leg day at the gym. You're like, bro, do you even lift? But I never skip leg day. Leg day though is just, oh my, you working out legs? It's like walking out of the gym wobbly. And it's like, okay, I hope I recover. But here's what I found. Afterwards, as time goes on, I'm not able to just walk again normally. But when I go back into the gym, I can lift more weight. Wait, hold on. I'm actually stronger. That it was actually because of the stress that I developed strength. Listen, not only for you to develop a faith focus, not only for you to keep a humble heart and have a humble heart, but for you to have a strong spirit. I want you to know you're not just going to survive the attack on your life, you're actually going to become stronger because of it. Oh yes, you are. You may be like, you don't know what I'm facing. And I want you to recognize you don't know what God can do in and through it. You might be like, I'm wobbly, I'm barely standing. Hey, that's like me on leg day. But what you're going to see is far greater than the results that even I see at the gym when God takes you to levels you never dreamed possible.